So I've successfully transitioned into a technical role with a background in sales. I have no background in computer science. I have no background in finance, and I have no background in the role that I was offered. So in today's video, I'm going to share exactly what I did in order to transition from a sales role into a computer science technical role as a reconciliation analyst at a finance company. So let's dive in and I'll show you exactly my step-by-step process. Hi, and welcome to the channel. My name's Everett Minshall. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about how I was able to get a job in a role that I have no background in an industry I have no background in, and it's been a long journey. If you're familiar with what I do in the channel, I make YouTube videos about finance and Python and using data to build out financial models and other cool stuff like that using finance data. So I really couldn't have asked for a better opportunity to put those skills to the test, as it aligns with what I'm doing here on YouTube. It aligns with my personal interests. So I'm really happy with the role that I got. And I think it was really tough getting here. And I think there could be a lot of value in sharing exactly what I did, how I built out my resume, to all the way to some interview tips. And hopefully you guys find it helpful. I'll be sharing some of the tools and ideas and just philosophy that I used in order to land this job. The first tool I used was Teal, which is a resume builder. It's really good because it helps you build out the resume that you need, and you can create multiple resumes by using one, and then it provides you a little score and little ways of improving your resume. So you can see here I have like a bunch of different lists of different titles that I was going for, and it'll change on the resume depending on which one I was looking for. The ones that I had the most success with were data analyst, data scientist. It helps you write professional summaries. If you're applying for multiple different role types that sort of fall in the same domain, you can quickly switch out which uh, summary you want to use. It lays out an easy way for you to just throw in all the achievements that you want to highlight in your experiences in the past, and you can just do these cool like ads, check mark boxes in order to customize your resume. I found it super useful because that way I could apply to data scientist roles, data analyst roles, machine learning roles, and I didn't have to worry about going through, changing on a Google Doc, re-downloading it, et cetera, et cetera. I could just quickly customize it, throwing in all the different achievements that I've had in my career and picking and choosing which one fit best with the role that I was applying for at the time. And then it goes into education, and you can add all the skills that you want to use and interests. And like I said before, it has a little, summary analysis of how good your resume is and what kind of keywords you're using, et cetera, et cetera. You can upgrade to get more features, but I found that the basic Teal account was fine. It also offers other things like job tracker, which as you can see here, I kind of used, but I found that it was a little cumbersome and I didn't really like it all that much. And you have contacts, companies, it's got a ton of stuff, this career hub here. But I don't want to get into all that because I didn't really use it. It does come with an extension. So when you go to LinkedIn, and you can add job postings directly into the app here for you, so you don't have to manually do it. However, I did a little bit of research and I found that you tend to understand your problems and the data that you're working with if you manually plug in the information into the fields that you're looking at. And I feel like with job searching, it's not so much about quantity. I mean, you do have to apply a lot, but if you're targeting the right kinds of jobs, manually doing it isn't all that difficult. It doesn't take too much time out of your day, and it teaches you just intuitively what roles you'll be better at uh, being prepared for, and what roles and what companies are more likely to respond to you if you manually work with the data. So I actually suggest staying away from automated tools like that, because it tends to lead you down a path of just like cramming as much um, activity as possible without thinking about what information it is that contributes to your success. So when it comes to data like this, I'd highly suggest working with the information that you're collecting and aggregating it in one place manually. And so the way I would do that, for example, is say I come to a job board like LinkedIn like this, and I would basically go through and say like, okay, this role looks interesting. Let's save that. Right after reading through it, I might say like, oh, okay, yeah, looks like they're mentioning SQL. You just need a bachelor's degree. I can prove that I'm a self-starter. I can prove that I've written verbal skills. Okay, cool. That sounds like something I'd be interested in. And so I would save it. And this is really good because it comes with the person that you actually want to message, which I'll get into later. But you but that's a good sign that it promotes the person that you're looking for. And maybe I'd look at this one, I'd say, okay, cool. This also has a name attached to the job posting. There's a lot of people applying to it, but let's look at the background and responsibilities. Okay, I don't have 2 years of SQL. I don't have 2 years as a data analyst person because I'm transitioning into this role, but maybe I can prove I have Excel and I can prove some of these other things. For me, I would pass on this one because it looks like this would be more difficult for me to prove in my resume and my background than, say, other job postings. And so you sort of just intuitively will go through all of these different ones and go through the same sort of thing. Okay, U.S. Space Force, that sounds super interesting, but it looks like active security clearance. So, as someone who doesn't have any military background, this might be a really hard role for me to be competitive in. I'll skip it for now. Let's try this one, research data analyst. Okay, 150, that's a lot, but maybe I can stand out. What are they looking for? Bachelor's degree. Yep, I can show they have that. Finance knowledge, sure. Reasoning ability, yeah, okay. Yeah, Tableau. I can show that I can do this. So maybe I'll save this one too, right? I'll go through that. I would do this daily, right, where I'd save it. And then once I had them all saved, I would just go to my jobs and I'd look at all the different jobs that I had saved throughout my time searching. And I would then go through these one more time and add them to a Google Sheets where I had all my information stored. And that's what this looks like. So you can see here I have reconciliation analyst, which is the role I was offered uh, just at the time of this recording, it was recently. I have the name of the company, the link to the job posting, the location of the job, and this is typically where I'd put salary, but I've left it blank just because it's private information. I don't want everyone on the internet to know how much I'm making at this company. But typically, this is where I'd put how much money I expect to make from that role. All right. So I know I'm only showing one instance or this one positive login here, but I want to show you how many jobs I actually applied to. So if we keep scrolling up, these are all the jobs that I applied to. The ones in gray are the ones I heard back and were denied. The ones in yellow were the ones where I made it to an interviewing process, but either it got filled or I was denied or something along those lines. So you can see here I have like 60 applications before I got an offer. It's actually way more than that because this is only maybe a month or two of me utilizing this method to my job searching application. I've been searching for a job much longer than the past 2 to 3 months, but it's only been about a month or two since I've been utilizing manually typing in the information of the title, the company, URL, location, salary, the next steps that I need to take, whether I was denied, whether the position was filled, et cetera, right? The ones that are left without any color are ones where I just never heard back from either the recruiter or I got an email from, or I just lost track of it in in my inbox and whatnot. So um, like I said, I highly suggest just setting up a Google Sheets where you plug this information in because you'll see what kind of companies actually will get back to you. You'll get an idea of what kind of salary ranges you're looking at and what kind of steps you should expect in the process, and what kind of companies won't get back to you, and what kind of roles you're not, what kind of titles that you're not going to do well with. So, like I said, Google Sheets is a good tool to use for this kind of thing. Now, let's say I add a few of these accounts here. Okay, so data analyst from Hustlewing. So data analyst from Hustlewing, URL, and let's say it's remote. And let's say I'm going to make this many dollars. Okay, so let's say I haven't applied to it yet, so we'll apply. And let's say I do another data analyst role from whatever, and also it's URL. Let's say it's in New York City. I'm going to make this much money. I need to apply. Okay, great. So I type in all of the saved jobs that I have here into my Google Sheets with the information that I have. So, um, maybe like twice a week or whatever, I come to my Google Sheets and I look at all the things that I need to do on my Google Sheets. I need to apply to these three here, right? I would go to the page and I would eventually apply to the role in that company. And once I applied to the role at that company, I would then go back to LinkedIn. I would look for the person who posted the job, and I would either send them a connection request or, if they have it available, a message. So it looks like this person you can message and you can shoot off a message like that. Sometimes they're not going to have a name attached to the job posting. Let's say it's a huge company like, what do I got here? Let's say it's a big company like Albertsons, right? And I'm looking for a data analyst or pricing analyst for Albertsons. You can go to the search bar, go Albertson. Well, what would I? Oh, I would do recruiter, and you're going to get obviously a ton of returns on that keyword. But then I would do people. Now we're getting a bunch of people with recruiter in their titles, but we want just current company, and we'll type in Albertsons companies, the results. And now we have many more recruiters for that company specifically. It can be difficult which recruiter you want to reach out to. So you still have to do a little bit of digging, but something that I've found works well is typing in the location of the role, because typically it'll tell you like, okay, for the Albertsons company, this is in Boise, Idaho. So we'll do Boise, Idaho. And it's like, okay, Aaron Jensfold might be a good person to reach out to for this role. Yeah, actually, he would be the person I would reach out to. So I'd either follow him, I'd look at his profile, send him a connection request, just say, hey, this is the position I applied to. I'll usually throw in I'd find this number here, the job identification number, and I would put it in the message. So I'd say, like, hey, Aaron, just applied to this title. Here's the job identification number. Would love to learn more about it. Something like that, right? Um, and so that's what I would do. I would just type in recruiter, filter by people, filter by company, and then filter by location. And it's sort of a guesswork. Not everyone's going to get back to you, but I found that like 2 or 3 out of 10 recruiters would get back to me either saying, I'm not responsible for that role, or I'll pass it along to someone, or hey, sounds great. Let's set up a schedule. If um, a word though, if you can find the hiring manager for the role that you're applying for, that's a lot better. Getting a hold of a hiring manager is a much more effective method than a recruiter because most people are hitting up recruiters for jobs, especially in this job market. So, yeah, if you can find the hiring manager for the position, it's a lot better. Sometimes, if that's what you're going for, so let's redo our search here. Let's say you are looking for that. Let's say we'll just do pricing analyst, and we'll look for posts. And then if you go to all filters, you can do from company. Um, and typically, if you add company's name, we'll do Albertsons companies. Okay, this is a bad example, but sometimes if you type in the role and posts along with the company, it might show like the hiring manager or a recruiter making a post for that role because sometimes hiring managers or people will, you know, post that they're hiring, hey, we're hiring for this role. And typically, people who see those posts are just people who work at the company, and it'll have like 3 likes. And very few people see those posts, but if you go searching for it, sometimes you can find it. So, um, as far as the actual interviews went, um, the main things that I highlighted were just like how my previous sales background was good for soft skills, and then my springboard training was good for the hard skills that they were looking for, like SQL and Python and data analysis. Um, and I think that's a good strategy. So if you have a background outside of the technical role that you're applying for, just try to think of like, I'm good at organization. I'm good at communication. I'm not a psychopath and I can get along with people, right? Those are the things you want to highlight there. And then it's nice if you have some kind of boot camp or educational training for those harder skills that you need to prove that you can do. Um, the interview was pretty rigorous. I had like 3 or 4 rounds, and I applied to multiple roles in the company that I had to interview for. So in total, I had to interview like 7 times. Um, and, I had to just be persistent, persevere, not give up, not be, not check my ego and not get offended if I interviewed 3 times but didn't get a role. And, like I said, that perseverance is really important in this role, in this search. So if you get an in with a recruiter at a company, it's definitely worth not burning that bridge just because you didn't get the role the first time. Like apply again, reach out to that same recruiter, build rapport. Eventually you will meet enough people in the company and get on the recruiter's good side, and they will see that you are trying to work at that company and they will do their best to help you achieve that goal. Like people operate with well intentions. So take advantage of that. Don't be don't be upset if you didn't get it the first time. Just keep applying. Any personal in that you can make with a recruiter is super important. So definitely leverage that. I mean, that's the important thing. Like the relationships that you make in that company is more important than you actually getting the job because, yeah, it'd be nice to get it on the first application, on the first try, the first applying process that you go through, but sometimes it might take you 2 or 3 times. Regardless, you're still meeting your end goal. So, yeah, just keep trying. If you get a report inside a company, don't destroy it. Be good-willed, and you'll eventually get there. Now, for me, the way it was broken up was the first was screening from the recruiter to make sure that I had at least a general sense of the responsibilities that I needed to do, and that I had a general qualifying um, acumen about myself for the role that I was applying for. And then I was then scheduled for a second interview with members within the company. It was a panel interview of 3 to 4 people, and they just asked me general questions. Some of them behavioral, some of them uh, skills based, so Python or SQL. Some of them were about my resume, picking apart like, what did you mean by writing this in your resume? um, Things like that. And then I would classify the last sort of set of questions as mathematical. So the two quantitative questions that I was asked was, imagine a 12 by 12 Rubik's cube that is dipped in a bucket of paint. How many cubes on the Rubik's cube have paint on it? That was pretty difficult, that you need to be able to do on the fly. They're looking for how well you reason through the problem, as well as getting the actual right answer. So if you're doing something technical, especially if it's like data related and quantitative related, definitely study up on some of those like math puzzles that you'll need to do. The other one that I was given was, let's say they gave me a set of numbers and then they asked me to predict what the next number would be. Um, and they help you. It's not like, if at least in this one, it wasn't as if it was just like me sitting there scratching away on pen and paper. I talk out loud. If I get stuck somewhere, they'll sort of give me a hint on what they're looking for. I don't think there's any right or wrong answers, but obviously it helps to show that you can think through a problem with a strategy and then also use logic to conclude what the right answer is. Um, but those were the two most difficult questions, just because the sequence of numbers was not super obvious. And the Rubik's Cube required doing geometric math and then applying algebraic math to find the actual answer. And I stumbled through it pretty hard on it. So it didn't come out very good, but I eventually got there. They were super nice. But yeah, that's maybe something to keep in mind. And then, of course, the skills based was just like write out a SQL query. What would you do in this instance? Uh, Testing my conceptual understanding of investment principles and finance principles. So it really depends on the domain that you're applying for. But yeah, and then behavioral was pretty easy. What I did was I memorized like 5 stories of the most broad kind of questions, like tell me a time when you had a conflict with a coworker. So then before I would think about all the times throughout my experience where that maybe applied, and then I'd write it down and I memorized the story, and then I would do that for all sorts of questions. Tell me a time when you had to solve a problem you didn't know how to solve, or tell me a time when um, you know, succeeded or failed, right? And I would have prepared answers for those behavioral questions, which really came in handy, because those behavioral questions you want to speak concisely, with structure and with quickness. It doesn't help you to sit there and go, let me think. You really want to have things like ready to go. And typically, stories can apply to many different types of problems. So, a conflict with a coworker, that story might also fit well with a time when you had to deal with a difficult personality, or let's say somewhere in that story, you had to come up with a creative solution so that you could work well with your coworker or whatever, right? So typically, those 5 stories will cover a broad range of behavioral questions, but it helps to know what stories you're going to talk about depending on, what they ask you. That way, you just like don't have to think too hard about your background and past and stumble through something on the fly. But yeah, that's all the things that I did. Takes a lot of perseverance. It really helps that I had a supporting family to keep my spirits up. It also helps that I had quite a lot of savings from my previous sales career. So yeah, hopefully that helps. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try to get back to them. I will get back to them. I'll see them. And one other note, because now I have a full-time job, YouTube videos might become bi-weekly, so 2 a month instead of 4 a month. But I'll do my best to keep it weekly. I've got a lot of videos in the pipeline, so bear with me. Yeah, I hope this helps, and I'll talk to everyone later. Bye.